reminds me of days when I was a kid. Every winter we'd flood the backyard and we'd play hockey. It wasn't very big backyard, but it was. So we thought we were playing in the Olympics. We had so much fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keeps your
So
heart
I
young.
pressed record already because I've still only got 2 hours. But Paul, I haven't seen you in a while. Do you mind opening us up in prayer today?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'll turn the video. Gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this community who are interested in the Aleph Tav, Father, and searching and seeking and pulling out truths that have been hid for years that we may live rightly before you. Help us open our ears and help us to understand everything Eric shares tonight. And we just thank you for this brother, Abba, set his life aside for the Aleph Tav, and just bless him in every possible way known to man. In Yahushua's name, amen.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
And
you.
with that, I'll turn off the microphones and the cameras and let you go. We'll see you in a couple hours, Eric.
I'm a couple minutes late, but the reason why my wife was cooking some sweet potato there for breakfast that I had, and all of a sudden I had you might say a divine enlightenment regarding the burning bush incident. When Yeshua rose from the dead, one of the first things he did, he appeared at the edge of the lake where they were fishing, and he was cooking fish, and fish became the symbol of the Christian movement. Well, at the burning bush, Yahuwah was cooking sweet potatoes because he had already established you are what you eat. And he says, I am what I am. I got some mileage out of it. Anyway, what we're going to talk about today is simply Habakkuk, chapter 3. Okay, anyway, it starts off in Stones to Knock. I'll read that, start with. It says, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet for erroneous utterances. What erroneous utterances? Where do they get that? So if you look at the way it's written, it says, tefillah, that's the word prayer. Interesting thing about tefillah, tav pei lamed hey. Well, pei lamed aleph, pei lamed yod, and pei lamed hey are three spellings of the root of the word paleo. It happens to be the root of the word prayer, tefillah. There's also a little more to the meaning. You can look it up in the dictionary. But anyway, it says la lamed means unto or by. Het bet kuf of kuf, but it might mean also for. So the lamed prefix can mean a few different things. Well, that's just the prophet's name, Habakkuk. But we also, as mentioned last week, is that het bet is in like in your heart, het bet bet, where you get the word chababi, meaning my beloved, the dear one, precious to me. And then kuf of kuf, or bet kuf means emptiness, and it has something to do with like this belt, or like the girth. I think it's called a girth strap or belt that you put around a horse to hold the saddle on. So it's to be hugged or embraced. And then it says ha navia, hey nun bet yod aleph, navi, which is the aleph is a silent letter, but that's the word for the prophet. But bet yod aleph is the word. Well, yod bet yod aleph is where you get the word yavo. Bet yod aleph means to enter or to arrive or to come into. Hey is the, noon is this action of happening. So something's happening. It's simply translated prophet or to prophesy, but it's to give. The word ayin lamed means yoked or connected. Ayin lamed hey means to raise up or ascend or surpassing excellence. It's to be promoted to a higher dignity, to be elevated. It's usually rendered up high. So, for example, the Israeli airline, I think it's pronounced El Al. It's Aleph Lamed, Ayin Lamed. I was at the airport in Jerusalem one time wondering if they had a shirt that said El Al, because it means in English, God Most High, you might say, or the supreme power or the highest strength. Aleph Lamed, translated God, or where they get where the word Allah, simply means deity or to elevate to supreme majesty. Then Ayin Lamed is high, or so El Elyon, Aleph Lamed, Ayin Lamed Yod Vav Nun, the Yod Vav Nun suffix for El Elyon is the one who is accomplishing that Ayin Lamedness. So, and I said, I asked somebody in the airport, some Israeli person, is there a place around that would sell a T-shirt of El Airlines? And said, what? I said, El Al. What? El Al. You know, the airline going, oh, you mean El Al? And it's like, what? That's what I said. No, you didn't. So just so you know, I'm probably butchering the translation or the speaking, the pronunciation. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes. Rendering of the speaking, the pronunciation of chapter 3. Just telling you off the bat. Well, it looks to me, Aleph Lamed, Ayin Lamed. A is silent, so it's pronounced as an E-L, like the Spanish word. Ayin Lamed, is that the guttural G-H, Ghal? Is it Ghal? L-L, anyway. Just so you know, that word Ayin Lamed can do a few different things, but it's actually a yoke. So it's almost like the effect of a hyphen. And then there's the word that's spelled Shin Gimel Yod Nun Vav Tav. Shaginot. Well, the Vav Tav is plural. And so you've got Gimel Yod Nun. Well, where's the word erroneous utterances? Where does that even come in? Is that the word to utter? Is that the word erroneous? So I'm just saying that when I say that the professional translators play around, whoever translated this, where did they come up with that? A prayer of Habakkuk the prophet regarding, well, Shin is a prefix letter, which means belonging to. But if you look at the very last word of the whole chapter, verse 19, it says, Bet Nun Gimel Yod Nun Vav Tav Yod. And it's translated, my songs. So Gimel Yod Nun has to do with music, song. Nun Gimel is to put to music. Bet is the prefix in the condition of, well, that's very similar to the prefix Shin. So if what he's saying here is this is a prayer or something that's paleo, having to do with this embracing of vanity, of emptiness, of something that's gone empty, maybe that's where they get erroneous utterances, is another way of translating the word Habakkuk. The prophet, or you could say that in order to cause the arrival, Hanavia, yoked with music. Well, if that's the case, and then the very last words, the last couple words of verse 19 here, in the Stones Tanakh, this is the last verse of the whole book, it says, to the conductor for accompaniment, parenthetically, with my songs. So I mentioned there's a song that the group Yama Ensemble does, which is called Mimakomka. Beautiful song. If you just punch in Yama Ensemble shofar, there's a guy playing a little short ram's horn. He does a great job. He gets all these different notes out of it. But there's a phrase, the irony of the juxtaposition of the singer singing the word Natzak Menatsikim. It's like he's really, it's a prayer. the song is a prayer that they've put to music. There's just three people up on stage, and very soft, very somber, very quiet. But yet that word here spelled Lamed Mem Nun Zadi Het, the word Nun Zadi Het is one of the most spectacular words in the language. And to know what that word means, and he's singing it so quietly, it's like, what? I'll tell you what it means in a minute, having to do with the triumphant victory. So for them to say, well, this is saying to the conductor with my songs. Bet, they say, it means with. Tav Yod is my. Vav Tav is plural. So Nun Gimel Yod Nun Nagin must be song. This is to the conductor with my song, or for my song. Well, that means this Habakkuk chapter 3 is meant to be put to music. So I'm going to read it through in English, according to Stone's Tanakh translation. If you have KJV or NIV or whichever one that you, the scriptures, I found that to be a nice version back when. And then I'm going to read this through the translation that I just rendered yesterday, just so you get a distinction. And then what I did is I wrote out phonetically all the Hebrew, because you wouldn't want to sing this song in English, you got to sing it in Hebrew. So somebody who's a musician, I'm trying to make this possible so that we could do what he said, put this chapter 3 to music. So I'm trying to accommodate that. Okay, so this is what it says, starting with verse 2. And I'll tell you how I see this lining up with the alphabet letters, and that's what we'll get into later. Oh, Yahweh, I have heard your news. I was afraid. Oh, Yahweh, in the midst of years, keep your accomplishment alive. In the midst of years, make it known. In wrath, remember to be merciful. Stop there for a second. What's he talking about? Okay, now this is chapter 3. So we talked about chapters 1 and 2 the other day. So let me just back up, and because when he says, I heard your news and I was afraid, starts off chapter 1. He says, why do you allow the wicked to overrun the righteous? I know that you can't tolerate this stuff in your own people. Why do you put up with it with all these people on the face of the earth? And then he says, verse 4 of chapter 1, that's why the Torah is weakened and justice never emerges. Since the wicked surround the righteous, therefore justice emerges distorted. So what he's saying is, listen, Yahweh apparently has made these rules of the universe. And remember, that's what they said in the book of Job. Job's friends came to counsel him when bad stuff started happening. And remember, his friends were trying to give him good counsel. And at the very end of the book of Job, Elohim, Yahuwah, speaking to Job, says to him, okay, now offer some sacrifices for your friends. What did they say wrong? You go back and read what they said. They're saying, listen, we know how the world works. Good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. That's the way it's built. So if you have a bunch of bad stuff happening, you must have done something wrong. So just repent and get it over with. Just confess everything you need to confess. Clean up your slate and get back to things going well for you. And Job was going, I didn't do anything. Shut up. Now you're absolving yourself, which is more crime. just shut up and confess your sin. And gosh, I mean, that's basically the staging of the book of Job. And right here, Habakkuk says, Yahweh, if you would just punish the wicked like you say you should do, you're going to do, that's what it's all about. Why don't you? Well, there's some people today, present tense, here it is in November of 2022, as we talked the other week, that are saying, this whole idea of punishment is bogus, is not Elohim's disposition. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. It's bad translation. It's church religion trying to pound and overbear on people's minds to keep them afraid and stifled. But yet, as I pointed out, every single one of these books of the minor prophets, starting with Hosea all the way through Zephaniah, next book after Habakkuk, starts off talking about people that are in really big trouble and got all kinds of destruction and death and smashing ruin coming upon their entire civilization and the land. That's the way Zephaniah starts off. Yahweh just said, that's it. The entire land, animals, fish, birds, everything's going to be smashed and destroyed. So we'll look at Zephaniah next week probably. But what I'm saying is, like, so when is that going to happen? Because there's this big delay. That's why the people had a saying, the fathers eat sour grapes, the children, or maybe their great-grandchildren's teeth are set on edge. It's like, gosh, the people that did the criminal acts don't ever seem to get punished. It's like generations later. It's like, what's up? That's the staging for this book. Verse 13, your eyes are too, is Habakkuk saying to Yahuwah, your eyes are too pure to see evil. You cannot look upon wrongdoing. Why then do you look upon betrayers? You remain silent when a wicked man swallows up one more righteous than he. Chapter 2, then, the beginning says, I'll stand my watch, take my place at the siege. I'll just wait to see what happens. And then verse 3, for yet there's another vision about the point of time. It will speak of the end. It will not deceive. In other words, whatever Habakkuk's vision is going to be, it's going to be true. It's going to play out. Don't worry, even though you don't understand the timing and it seems to never happen. And then in verse 4 of chapter 2, behold, his soul is defiant, it's unsettled, but the righteous person shall live through his faith. So last week we talked about the just shall live by faith. In chapter 2 here, he's saying, well, this is really what's going to happen to the evil people. Woe to him that amasses that which is not his. How long can he go on? He burdens himself heavily with thick mud. It's like everything the evil people do, it's building up, it's building up, it's building up until wham, it's all going to come down. And so we could look around at United States or other places in the world and say, gosh, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You know that saying? That's one of the things. How big does Elohim have to allow the giant to get before, the word Nephilim, Nun, Pe, Lamed, Aleph, that's paleo, that's the root of paleo, Lamed, Yod, Mem, the plural, Nephilim, that's where we get the word fallen, the fallen ones, the Nephilim, the giants that come crashing down. And it's like, you look at statue in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, that big giant statue, the rock hit the feet, bam, the whole thing comes crashing. It's like, when will you, hello, Yahuwah, will you please come and just stop these guys that are ruining everybody, ruining everything, just an offense to you? And it's like, where are we on the map? What's about to happen? What? When? And the rhetorical question, not rhetorical, it's actually very legit. How many of who has to do what, when, for how long, with what heart? Before the impact's noticed, before Yahweh will do. Chapter 2, verse 9, woe to him who gains profit for his house, so that he may set his nest up high, to be rescued from the grasp of evil. It's like, if you use evil means, oppression, ripping off your workers, deceptions, to build your place stronger and more set up, it's not going to work for you. That's what chapter 2 is about. Woe to him who gives this fellow to drink, so you can intoxicate them, so you may look upon their nakedness, which is the not only lechery, but you might say to notice their vulnerability, to get them to talk, so you know how to come in and attack them. It's all fraudulent extortions and connivings. Verse 10, The cup of Yahweh's right hand is turned upon you, and the vomit of shame will cover your glory. Whatever you do that's counter to Elohim's ways, his derek, his halakha, anything that anybody does that's contrary to Elohim's ways is going to come back on them and be their very destruction. If somebody steals something from you to get ahead, the very thing they stole will be toxic, poison, will be their ruin, especially if they take from someone who belongs to Yahweh. Verse 14 in chapter 2, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Yahweh's glory, or the kavod, as waters cover the seabed. We talked about that the other day. It's like, that hasn't happened. Well, what's the knowledge of Yahweh's kavod? Understanding the way things work. So all through here, chapter 2 ends with, woe him who says to wood, wake up, to silent stone arise. Will it teach? Does it have any wisdom? Does it know what's going on? Well, if a computer can only have the information that's programmed into it, and then it processes that, if the people who make the AI have no sense of Elohim and the way he does things, no sense of justice, no sense of truth, then there's no intelligence. It's not going to serve mankind with any benefit. So it's the spirit within man that's linked with Yahweh. That's the teaching. That's where the voice is that we need to listen to. AI can't do that. Wake up! No, it can't. I'm just touching on things we mentioned a couple of weeks ago to give a perspective. So then it jumps right into chapter 3, where it says a prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, for erroneous utterances. Well, so the rabbinical footnote here in Stone's Tanakh says, oh, the erroneous utterances, where when he says, the reason why everything's messed up is nobody thinks there's any reprisal for what they do. They think they're getting away with it all. That's not an erroneous utterance. Where's the erroneous utterance? I believe we'll come to it. In the prayer, where might it be? Okay, so I talked about correlating these statements to the Alphabet. So I'm going to read the Alphabet letter that I appropriated it to and read it again in English. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to read the English so you have a flow of thought. And when I read the translation, then I will tell you the alphabet letters. Okay, so in the second verse, oh, Yahweh, in the midst of years, keep your accomplishment alive. It's like, what accomplishment? Having a people? That seems to be the only accomplishment that Yahweh.
Are we on Habakkuk 3? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Verse 2, that the only accomplishment that Yahweh keeps talking about, that Israel is his heritage. Israel having a people that he says, Ami, my people. I'm your Elohim, you are my people. That seems to be the focus of what the entire scripture is about. The Brit Olam, the eternal covenant. Why did Yeshua come here to the earth and go through this gauntlet of terror? To bring life to his accomplishment? That word accomplishment is pei ayin lamed kaf, kaf suffix meaning you. So here, just as a little note, I remember hearing in church days, back when, that Paul, P-A-U-L, is the Roman name given to a guy named Shaul, or Saul, S-A-U-L. So Saul was the Jewish guy, studied under Gamaliel, so he had that event that happened to him. He was riding his horse on the road to Damascus to basically beat up a bunch of Christian believers, and all of a sudden the light hit him and he fell off and he had the like scales on his eyes. And because of the event happened, he was compelled to change his heart, change his mind, change his behavior So he changed his name also to Paul because it was similar to Saul. It's like, okay, I don't think that's an accurate story of why he changed his name, because the word Paul, Pei Ayin Lamed, well, here, just I'll show you just the benefit of the red dictionary. If we look at Pei Ayin Lamed, which is page 518, it means to do, make, or work. Well, that's really similar to Ayin Shin Hey, so it must be a synonym. He made, he accomplished, he influenced or prevailed upon. Became a verb. He induced someone to act. And then they'll say it's like the word derivative spelling, Hey, Pei, Ayin, Yod, Lamed. He activated, set into motion. Deed, action, reward, wage, verb. Reward, influence, effect. So the word Paul, Pei, Ayin, Lamed, is what happened to Shaul, and he became known as the guy who was compelled because of some overpowering force that happened to him to completely change his life. That's Pei Ayin Lamed. He wasn't any longer the killer of the Christ followers. He became their leading proponent. So, wow, how did that happen? Because of what happened to him on the road to Damascus, being knocked off his horse onto his ass. Anyway, play on words there. Just so you know, that word Pei Ayin Lamed is forcibly compelling, offering a reward, an inducement, this overwhelming influence to completely change into a verb action, which is what happens when you see what this Paleo-Hebrew stuff is about. In the midst of years, make it known. In wrath, remember to be merciful. In the midst of years. We'll talk about that when I get to the other translation. Elohim came from the south. This is verse 3. The Holy One from Mount Paran. I'll just read as Stones has it. Selah. Stop and think about it. He came from the south. Mount Paran. See, if you just look at the word Paran and say, I guess it's some mountain, like Mount Hood here in Portland, Mount Whitney down there in California, whatever, Mount Paran, okay. You can't think about it. That's all anyway. His glory covered the heavens. His praise filled the earth. Remember, this is Habakkuk praying. What's he actually trying to say here? A glow was like the light, rays of light from his hand to, in brackets they have Israel, because it doesn't really say to who, so the publishers have said, well, that must be what he's talking about. And there, his hidden strength. Try to wrap your mind. It says stop and think about it. Try to wrap your mind around what it's saying. I find it very difficult to do. Before him went a plague. Pestilence went forth as he advanced. Is this past tense, or is what's going to happen future tense? He stood and measured out the land. He looked and dispersed nations. Everlasting mountains were smashed, eternal hills were laid low, for the ways of the world are his. Because of iniquity, I saw the tents of Cushan. The curtains of the land of Midian trembled. The curtains of the land of... Was Yahweh angry with the rivers? Was your wrath with the rivers, your fury against the sea? Rather, you rode upon your horses. Your chariots were salvation. Your bow bared itself. The oaths to the tribes, an enduring word. You split open the earth with rivers. We talked about that verse last week. Mountains saw, verse 10, and mountains saw you and shuddered. A stream of water flowed. Again, he's talking about rivers and mountains, but he said a moment ago, is he angry with the rivers? Is it with water that he contends? But then he goes on with the metaphor. The depth raised its voice, and the heights of heaven raised their hands. The sun and the moon stood still in their abodes. Israel would travel by the light of your arrows, by the lightning flash of your spear. Is he talking about the Exodus coming out of the land of Mitzrayim? Verse 12, in fury you trod the earth, in anger you trampled nations. You went forth to save your people, to save your anointed one. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked. So here is he saying his anointed one is the totality of the people of Israel? But so when did Elohim go forth to do all this stuff, is smashing the land? Is he talking about the Exodus out of Egypt? This is Habakkuk, so this is probably close to 1,000 years after Moses. You crush the head of the house of the wicked, laying bare from the foundation to the neck. Selah. Talked about that a couple weeks ago also. With his own staffs, you pierced the head of his outspread troops, who came storming to scatter me. Here's this picture with his own staffs, you pierced the head of the outspread troops, using their own weapons against themselves. That's one tactic that Elohim will use. Their joy came when they could devour a poor man in secret. That's kind of what like Habakkuk was saying in the very beginning. So why is he saying this is erroneous utterances? You trampled them in the sea with your steed-like clouds, with mountains of abundant water. I heard and my innards shuddered, my lips quivered at the report. Rot came into my bones and I shuddered in my place, because the time I should have rested will become a day of distress for people to come up with its troops. Is he talking about the Sabbath day or a time of the festivals? I mean, this is not a very nice song. This is supposed to be put to music? Verse 17, for the fig tree blossoms not, there's no fruit on the grapevines. The labor of the olive trees has failed, and the fields do not yield food. The sheep are cut off from the fold, and no cattle are in the stall. Kind of sounds like the days of 2021, with the COVID thing, pandemic across the face of the earth. 18, well, finally here, if you could make a song out of it, just these last couple verses. But as for me, in Yahweh I will rejoice. I will exult in the God of my salvation. It says Hashem/Elohim, that's Yahweh Adonai. The Lord is my strength. He makes my legs as harts, H-A-R-T-S, which is the word for deer. He makes my legs like as swift as deer. He leads me upon my high places, to the conductor with my songs. "35 years ago, I was in a certain church, and the fellow made a song out of that. I will exult in the Elohim of my salvation. That's also very similar to a phrasing in another passage of one of the minor prophets, clothe me in robes of righteousness and all. You could turn that into a song. I'm suggesting there's a whole different way to read that, which I'll do. So this is, now think about this. Something went wrong. Like I said before, what is it? Where is it? So if we correlate each one of these phrases to the alphabet letters, I'm just going to say, okay, the first subject, that's the Aleph. The next subject matter is Bet. The next subject matter is Gimel. The next one's Dalet, then Hey, then Vav. And I'm just going through the sequence. Sometimes I've seen passages of scripture where it doesn't seem to follow the alphabetic sequence, and it kind of jumps around, in which case when you see that it's actually spelling words that are hidden behind the text, at least that's the way it looks from a poetic assessment. But in here, in this case, all 22 letters fit right to the end. Aleph. Yahweh, I listen, you hear. I fear Yahweh. You activate. You set in motion the operational functioning in the midst of displaced changes. Life exists. Bet. In the midst of perverse distortions in doctrine, instruction, Gimel, make it known, cause rachem, to be remembered amidst wrath and vexing agitation. Dalet, expressed image from the right hand of power, description and likeness of Aloha towards man. He arrives, yet kadosh, from a pregnant womb, the ultimate glorious adornment, such prestige, to acquire a wife at the ultimate cost, like engineered arrangement of Mazarot covering the heavens, his praiseworthy glorification, brilliantly made known, filling the earth, confirming the accomplishment of run the course. Hey, correct navigation errors by revising the text of spelling words, shining like a bright light. Radiant beams of splendor truly exist. His own horns of strength and power, glory and might, resources at hand at once, immediately. Vav, and right there, hidden fortress, the mighty citadel made evident, its secret access of refuge expressed. Zion, at face value, belonging to it, he who walks as worded, stipulated, emits sparks from his feet of flame, a fiery bird of prey, his porosity, maneuvering his dance steps, pattern of footwork, rhythm. In the Moedim, Chet, established, appointed in place as the index standard of measure for the whole earth throughout all time, just sitting there evident, waiting to be perceived by he who would search. Nations are torn apart, ruptured, disintegrated. Permanent mountains, empires erode like slime flowing avalanche. Heights of world renown, been around forever, are brought low, are cast down when challenged by those preceding walking Torah. According to legal procedure, full scope, across the board, universally, totally, it's the axiom of truth and justice. Tet. Underneath it all, the weighty matter that balances the evident part, like the keel of a boat. Deception, wickedness, idolatry yield trouble, sorrow, pain. What we do is a deed of purchase for later. It's clear to see. We will abide in the suit made of the threads we amass ourselves with, like one loading a spindle for the weaving. One who is bad-tempered, irascible, constantly irritated, attracts shouts of harm, volleys of evil upon himself, cast down from the heavenly powers as suitable reprisal. Yod. Rivers hotly anger Yahweh? He contends with rivalry against light beams? If rivers don't flow the right way, he gets his nose stuffed up. He's got an issue with water. It's your trespasses, your bad character, contrary to his character. It's like riding a bicycle or horses and chariots, tandem, matched, pas de deux, the dance of two. He who cries for help must be in step with the routine, or he who expects to be helped from Yahweh must be in sync with the dance of two, but a pas de deux with him. Cough, my shame is blatant. Awaken my excitement, stimulate, arouse my connection. You're cruel, difficult to understand, severe, stiff, your instrument of war. 7 curses? 7 times punished for breaking a vow? Seems distorted. Unfair justice, something doesn't weigh out right. Enlighten me. I will study. I desire to become expert. I will run. I will storm your castle to find out. Lamed, you are the one who allows someone to understand, who gives eyes to see. He who dances successfully, writhing in anguish, in hope, soldierly, brings forth. Mountains are swept away in a torrent of floodwater. Hebrew is established, appointed as permitting or giving up, as delivering, like a birth, from the depth of abysmal formlessness, his voice exalted. From being lost, removed, to being the highest, the best, the most outstanding. I determined to take it on, engage. Mem, sun, moon, placed in position as appointed. Dwelling as a beetle in dung, or light. It's your distinction. You make the partition. They who walk as directed, navigating by the light of truth, as lightning illuminates the night. Exclusively, it's the only means of warfare. Your lance, our equipment, the provision of your encampment, generously, graciously training us in its use. Noon. Black snake haunts the earth. Anger, wrath, indignation, arresting, incarcerating freedom to run, with fury to flatten, to tread down nations. Psalmic. Blossom, flourish. Go forth as one saved, delivered, your people, as one saved and delivered. Aleph Tav, exactly as you communicated. Where was Mashiach wounded? Head, hands, feet, back, side? An interesting little parenthetical note. We talked the other week that the word for crown, crown of thorns, meant something. The folded napkin bandage meant something. It's all so where was he wounded? The hands, the feet. What does that mean? Well, there's a certain word in Hebrew, gimel pei. Literally, it means head, hands, feet, backside. Guf, gufon, gufun, gimel vav pei, hug, embrace. Well, that's a synonym with this picture of Habakkuk. It also means, besides hug and embraced, it means substance, essence, the very thing. So if you could say, why was he wounded? Why was Mashiach Yahusha wounded in the feet, the way we walk, the hands, the things we do, the head, the way we think about his kavod that he imposed, that he gave to us, his heart, ripping his heart apart because we hate his stuff so much? Gimel Pei Vav Nun means literally the subject dealt with, and it also literally means orthography of the alphabet letters. If you could see that Yeshua was wounded in a pattern that literally means the orthography of the alphabet letters. In other words, the message is in the alphabet. What do you think this is for? The message is embedded, is hidden within the alphabet. Basic, this is still Psalmic, basic, fundamental, topmost, ultimate. Basic, fundamental, topmost, ultimate, taught to be of the house. Evil, wicked, wrong is shameful and exposes you to the same. No covering. The hidden foundation is proven to be valid in that it does turn. It will make a path, produce testimony that the best was chosen. Here now is the solution to the whole dilemma. And then the letter ayin. Please specify exactly what is blasphemy, what is cursed, what crime is most heinous, such that he rages vehemently until exploding in storm, rejoicing like one who eats the poor, needy, afflicted, and suffering, they who can't find protection from his tempest, shelter being hidden in mystery, contradictions, and secret runes. Pay. You have instructed your seahorses, severely boiling oceans foaming up, aggravating deep sea monsters unleashed. Zadi. Angry about deceptive translations? These are the erroneous utterances? I hear agitated, angry voices, quaking, exciting, uttering, expressing a voice, making pure, clarifying my language set to music. It's happening now, enraged at the abortion, what was done to putrefy the living seed. I am shaking with wrath. Whoever will rightly confirm, I will confirm kindness too, pleasing comfort, let alone to rest and repose on the day of affliction, oppression, big trouble, elevated to excellent prize value, as a people conspicuous for being opposite, for hammering contradiction, a different voice. That's exactly what we're doing by this study. All of you who have a heart for this, that's in the Zodi position, this sprout of beauty that's, which is the upshot of the whole chapter right there, and is what we're doing. Letter Kuf. Even if a fig tree has no sprout, a perfect excuse for quarrel, arguing that on account of sorrows and grief, because there's no blossom, no evidence of favor, and ain't no fruit on the vine, no noticeable benefit, looks like it's all a lie, falsehood, deception, disappointment, no action, still, quiet, silent, secret nothingness, can't even produce olives, destroyed unto death, nothing produced to eat, prohibition, stupid laws ruining everything, withholding resources. No sheep in the pen, no fuel in the tank, no cattle in the stall, everyone sick, discouraged, disheartened, no one to distinguish, to examine, to determine the truth. Resh, yet I am with Yahuwah. I rejoice, exulting. I abide in a circle of gladness, a realm of joyful music where Emai El-He saves me. I've built that consciousness. Sheen, Yahweh my Adon, my evaluator, my hope, in whom I expect to turn it all around. He who is capable with strength, power, and all wealth. Right there, my feet will dance. Like a stag, strong like bull, sturdy as an oak tree, I yield. Upon this stage, I will die. I will stand powerful, either one or both. As an Tav, as an overcomer, shining illustriously, arguing perpetually, enduring forever, victorious, triumphant, brilliant glory, which that way of treading actually causes the wine and oil to flow. Now that's my kind of music. That's a song to sing about. Okay, that's Habakkuk 3. Literally pulling open every single word of that prayer.